Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources. Hashtag how I got custody. This video yesterday I did prompted me to, it made me think about this phenomenon of judges and lawyers and other people saying that false allegations only occur in 2% of cases. I actually see that statistic in when there's a criminal rape case or in family court with child abuse, domestic violence, and molestation. So going back decades, or even I remember the Duke lacrosse case, you know, those lacrosse players who are falsely accused of raping a stripper. I forgot her name. Nancy Grace was up on there saying false allegations only occur 2% of the time. Here's the stupidity about that. So that statistic has remained exactly the same for 20 or 30 years. How is that even possible, first of all? Second of all, how do you find out when somebody is truly falsely accused? It's totally moronic that they can come up with a definitive stat. It's kind of like in the medical industry, they don't want any alternative medicine or anything like that. You know, they'll say, well, this doctor's a quack, or this doctor found a cure for cancer, or people talk about fasting cures cancer. They're a bunch of quacks. Well, where did they get that from? Just rumors from other doctors, because they're all in the same clique. They're all in the same money-making scam of the medical industry. So all these lawyers and judges are in the same industry. Judges go to seminars where they talk about only 2% of allegations of abuse are false. There's several points to hit on this. First of all, I know of a specific case in Pierce County, Judge James Orlando, who's a stupid, incompetent, airheaded, moronic jackass who's constantly defying the law and has gotten reversed, and he's an arrogant, self-righteous prick and a pure evil psychotic weirdo. I know a case in which the mother accused the father of molestation. CPS made it CPS investigation resulted in unfounded. The police would not even investigate because there was so little to no evidence at all. It wasn't even worthy of an investigation. But you go in front of Judge Orlando, he's such a radical feminist punk sellout to his own gender, fatherhood, and to children. He'll destroy a child's life with the father in a heartbeat. So will Judge Chuskoff in Pierce County. Now, they're built of the same mold, these big fat Pillsbury doughboy, soft, effeminate punk judges. So, one time Judge Orlando said, the father said, well, false allegations happen all the time. And he cited all these studies, all these experts. You know, Divorce Corp does a great job pointing this out. The CORP, if you go on YouTube and just watch their 2-minute trailer for their documentary, best documentary by far. Joe Sorge did a great job on it. He's just a big soft sissy when it comes to reform because he wants to talk like everybody's been talking for the past 50 years, and he hasn't done any history on that, researching how fathers' rights groups have been spinning their wheels for 50 years, 40 to 50 years, and accomplished nothing. And he's still thinking. See, everybody gets arrogant and gets an ego, big ego, like, oh, my resolution is going to work this time. So anyway, great documentary, and they point out how false allegations are common. But these idiots like Judge Orlando say, oh, it only happens 2% of the time. So this guy I was working with, he did a motion for reconsideration and went in front of Judge Orlando and said, you testified that false allegations only occur 2% of the time. First of all, you're not allowed to testify. Second of all, you got that from some seminar, so you're basing that off of hearsay. And then Judge Orlando shut up and kept it moving along. That's what judges usually do when you bust them or catch them in something. They move on to something else because they're a bunch of punk, sissy cowards and won't go, you know what, you're right. I care about truth and justice here, so let's get this right. I was wrong. Instead of doing that and earning our respect and maintaining the confidence in the judicial system, which is required by judges under the Code of Judicial Conduct, instead of maintaining their confidence, they just move along, and they're little, you get in a position of power, you just can't ever be wrong. You get a God complex. Anytime you're in a position of power, there's always a temptation to abuse it and get all stuck up in the head like you're greater than you are. That being said, so Judge Orlando got busted because he just makes a statement, well, 2% of the time are false allegations. Here's a problem. What if first of all, what if this is one of those 2% times? You're going to totally dismiss the mother in this case, whose case did not work with CPS, did not work with the police, so she comes to family court with a lower standard of evidence, preponderance evidence. The cops would have to have a case that would eventually lead to beyond a reasonable doubt in trial. So 2% of the cases have false allegations. Why aren't you looking into this in case it is false? Because the welfare of a child and their life and their development hang in the balance. And you say, well, that only happens 2% of the time, so you dismiss it. Well, maybe this is one of those 2% of the time. That's how you know they're a bunch of pathological, lying, detached, demon-possessed, psychotic, subhuman pieces of crap. They're child traffickers, and there's no, that's saying it nicely. They make money shuffling kids around and taking them away from fathers and putting them in the most dangerous home they could possibly in, a home of a single mother. That's where mothers commit 60% of child abuse. Their boyfriends and the new stepdads commit most of the molestation. Now that doesn't incriminate, don't get your panties in a bunch, mothers. That doesn't incriminate all mothers. There's plenty of good single mothers out there with absent dads and stuff. But the vast majority of cases with single mothers, they pushed the dad out, they took control, they used child support, they used the system, period, end of story. And people say, well, they do more child abuse because they have kids more. Okay, well, let's just change it over. Let's rescue the kids from that. That doesn't excuse it. See, people make emotional arguments because they get emotionally offended, because they identify with it. Don't identify with it. If you're not a child abuser, you don't have to worry about it. So don't get your panties in a bunch over that actual federal government statistic, 60%. And they commit the vast majority of domestic violence too. So, that being said, why not investigate? If there's 2%, this might be that 2%. If you care about the kid, why don't you investigate this? Now, how do you know 98% of cases accusing somebody are not false allegations? Because they're convicted? Because they went to jail? Because there's a finding of the court they did it in civil court or family court? That would mean that nobody in jail is ever innocent, but we see cases every week in this country of somebody getting out, being released on DNA evidence, turning their case over. So your whole premise is idiotic, because you're saying the false allegations only occur 2% of the time. 98% of the time they're true. How do you know they're true? Because you saw the resulting court result. Somebody can lie good enough to make the judge believe that it's false, you stupid jackass. But see, people don't think beyond the surface. This is why I did that video, to ask people, where did you get that from? And most of those people got it from their peers or a seminar, and they passed it along. And just like Hitler said, you tell a lie good enough, or one of his propagandists said, you tell a lie long enough, people will eventually believe it. On top of that, when a judge says that, they're bringing in something outside of the court. They're testifying. So first of all, judges can't testify. Rules of evidence 605, they're not competent to testify. Second of all, they can't possibly have personal knowledge, ER 602 or something like that, because they would have to examine every single case, follow through, and make sure that the evidence showed that the conviction or the finding of abuse was true. Not just on the surface there's a finding of abuse, but that it was true and not false. You can't just say, because we know people abuse the system. We know innocent people have gone to jail. So to say false allegations only happen, no, what you should say is false allegations are only found out 2% of the time. There's a big difference. So call out that BS when some stupid jackass judge or lawyer says that in court. Demand to know where they got that from. A judge needs to make a finding of fact and conclusion of law based upon evidence. If it's just some hearsay from a seminar, that's not good enough. So call that crap out. It's BS. And use some common sense when you analyze what people say, and you'll break it down and you'll come to these conclusions that I come to also.